Joining us now, Republican Senator Bill Hagerty. He is a member of the Banking Committee. How do you think, good to see you, Senator, welcome. How do you think Mr. Warsh did yesterday?
Likewise, Joe, good to see you. Becky, Andrew. I think Kevin Warsh did an outstanding job. It was a textbook performance. He answered everything. He had actually some very disrespectful questions from the ranking member, and he never let it get under his skin. Steady, disciplined, exactly what you want in a Fed chairman. I think he performed very well.
We had the president on yesterday, Senator, and this is all fine and good, and there's a lot of people that say we got to get going here. He's got to be seated for June for the next meeting, and I'm sure Chair Powell, you know, he doesn't want to hang around there and just listen to criticism. And I'm sure he's ready to go, but you know that nothing can happen until Senator Tillis decides to move it out of committee. You're stuck in committee, aren't you? What is the off-ramp? And then I'll show you what the president said yesterday, but what is the off-ramp?
Well, there may be other off-ramps that are under discussion, but one thing that's very obvious. Kevin Warsh has been confirmed in the past on a bipartisan basis. Members of this committee have voted for Kevin Warsh for the Fed governor before. This chairman position, I hope that they'll see the necessity of getting somebody as competent as Kevin into the position. And we can move forward with Democrat votes as well. That shouldn't be off the table. But given the partisan behavior of Chuck Schumer and the leadership, you think about shutting down the government in the fall for such an extended record-breaking period of time, what they've done to the Department of Homeland Security, I think, you know, it's a reasonable question whether he'll be seated, but I certainly hope that everybody will come to their senses and realize that Kevin is the man for the moment. He's the person to bring the Fed back into its lane and get our economy moving in the right direction.
Senator, you just commented that something may be happening behind the scenes. What is that conversation that could be happening behind the scenes?
I'm not privy to any specific conversation, Andrew, that might be happening behind the scenes, but we're certainly in a stalemate position with respect to Senator Tillis. I've heard his public commentary. I just don't know what's happening with this investigation and how that's going to be addressed.
Is it possible a Democrat could move it out of committee around Tillis?
Of course it's possible. The ranking member doesn't
Don't
indicate
hold your
any.
breath?
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath,
Blue.
but it's certainly possible. You think about it. I passed the Genius Act out of the same committee with completely bipartisan support. You know, Senator Warren was against it, but she held 5 Democrats with her. 5 Democrats came over and voted with me and all the Republicans to pass the stablecoin legislation, the Genius Act, just last year. It is certainly possible to get a bipartisan result here.
Because yesterday I wasn't badgering the president, but I did strongly suggest that you could find out everything you needed to find out if the Banking Committee took over the investigation, whether there's anything there. And, you know, I think it was Senator Scott who asked the original questions to Jay Powell. He said he didn't think there's any criminality. And I said, you know, so if you were to find out exactly about cost overruns and everything else through the Banking Committee, would it work? And I asked the president, and this is what he said. See if there's an opening here, Senator.
Well, it is and it isn't, Joe. You have to find out why a thing like that could happen, because if you have hundreds of projects like that, you know, very few are like this, but if you had hundreds of projects like that, you have to find out why that happens.
Senator, could the president say, could the president tell the DOJ to drop it and let it go to the Banking Committee? Is there a deal possible there, or does, once the DOJ acting independently decides that needs to send out these subpoenas, do they have to pursue it? I mean, is it possible something like that could happen?
Well, I'm certainly not a legal expert in terms of the machinations of the DOJ. I heard the exact same thing, the same thing you just cited, Joe, and Andrew raised it. But again, I'm not privy to the details of what something like this might look like. I would say this: I would accept any off-ramp right now because we need to get Kevin into this position. And I'm more than willing to consider anything that would help accelerate his nomination and get him into his post. We need him there by the 15th, the middle part of May, so that Jay Powell can finish his term and that we can get Kevin into position. Again, I think we've got great opportunity ahead of us. I think we're going to see huge opportunity with all of the investment that's coming into America.
What Democrat
to get the Fed back on track.
It's swayable. Give me 2 names that you think could, in the Banking Committee, that could do it. Are there discussions going with them to go around this completely?
To be clear, I don't want to get ahead of Senator Scott, who's the chair of the committee. I'll just say, take a look at my stablecoin legislation. We had 5 Democrats on the committee that supported that then. Angela also Brooks led that with me on a bipartisan basis. And I think that we certainly have potential to get people who are looking for the, for the best for our economy, that could see the potential of having Kevin in position and having it done quickly.
Yes, Senator Warren, watching that yesterday, she might not be the one you want to have.
I don't think she's going to be, she would not be on my list, Joe. She would not be on my list.
Senator, there is the possibility that Jay Powell will remain on the board of the Fed even after he would, his term as chair is over. How do you feel about that?
Andrew, it's not typical. And if I were in Jay's shoes, certainly I'm not, but if I were, I think it would be a good time to go ahead and depart. As was said earlier in the show, it's probably not going to be a very pleasant environment to stick around. Again, I think we need to get a new chairman into position. Kevin is ready to do it. He's the man for the moment, as I said yesterday. My view is let's get it on. Let's move forward. Let's get on with it.
But do you think that raises
forward.
questions about the independence of the Fed? I mean, there's an argument to be made that technically he has a term. He could stay and he should be allowed to do so.
Andrew, you're certainly correct. He should be allowed. I think it would be Jay Powell's choice to do that. Again, historically, that's not been the case. This is typical in most corporate America. When a CEO and chair retires, they generally give the new person, the new leader, the runway to move forward. And I think that would be the appropriate thing to do. But again, it'll be up to Chairman Powell.
He's threatened to do that. And if it got out of committee with a Democrat and the DOJ probe continued, Warsh could be seated and Powell could say, okay, I'm not leaving, because the DOJ probe is still going. So,
Right.
Joe, that outcome's certainly possible. Yes.
Okay. All right, Senator Hagerty, thanks. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Great to be with you all. Thank you.